Ancient Germany, a bedtime chronicle. A journey through time from the mists of prehistory to the dawn of the Third Reich. Welcome, dear listener. Close your eyes and let your mind drift back through the corridors of time. Tonight, we journey to the heart of Europe, to lands of deep forests and mighty rivers, where the story of Germany unfolds like an ancient tapestry, woven with threads of conquest, culture, and transformation. This is not just a history. This is a bedtime story for those who wonder about the roots beneath our feet, the echoes of voices long silenced, and the shadows cast by empires that rose and fell like the turning of seasons. Settle in, dear listener, as we begin at the very beginning, when the land we now call Germany was known by no such name, and its people were mysteries even to themselves. Chapter 1: The Dawn People, Prehistoric Germany, before 100 BCE. In the beginning, there was ice. Great glaciers carved valleys and shaped mountains, and when they retreated, they left behind a land of extraordinary beauty. Dense forests stretched endlessly, rivers flowed clear and cold, and in this wilderness, the first humans arrived. The earliest traces of human presence in this region date back over 600,000 years to Heidelbergensis, but our story truly begins around 5000 BCE with the arrival of farming communities. These Neolithic peoples built the first permanent settlements, raising longhouses and clearing patches of forest to plant barley and wheat. They kept cattle, pigs, and sheep. They made pottery with distinctive banded decorations, and archaeologists call them the linear pottery culture. Life was simple but precarious. A family's wealth was measured in livestock and grain stores. Children learned to farm, to weave, to shape clay and stone. There were no written records, no named rulers, only communities governed by elders and custom. When disputes arose between villages, they might be settled through gift exchanges or sometimes through violence. Mass graves from this period tell stories of brutal conflicts over land and resources. Around 2000 BCE, bronze working arrived. With it came new hierarchies. Those who controlled bronze, tin, and copper grew powerful. Chieftains emerged, buried in elaborate graves with weapons, jewelry, and offerings for the afterlife. The landscape was dotted with burial mounds, and stone circles marked sacred sites where rituals were performed under open skies. By 1000 BCE, iron had replaced bronze, and the societies of this region grew more complex. Fortified hilltop settlements appeared, surrounded by timber palisades. These were the ancestors of the Celtic peoples who would dominate much of Central Europe. And then, from the north, came new peoples. Tall, fair-haired, and fierce, they spoke languages different from the Celts. The Romans would later call them Germani, the Germans, and with their arrival, our story begins to have names, dates, and voices that echo down through the centuries.
Chapter 2: The Germanic Tribes, the Age of Tacitus, 100 BCE to 400 CE. The first written accounts of the Germanic peoples come from Roman observers, men who viewed these northern tribes with a mixture of fascination, fear, and condescension. Julius Caesar encountered them in the 1st century BCE, when Germanic warriors crossed the Rhine to raid Gallic territories. He described them as formidable warriors, living in a harsh land of forests and swamps, a people who valued courage above all else. But our most detailed portrait comes from Tacitus, a Roman historian who in 98 CE wrote a work called Germania. Though he never visited the region himself, he compiled accounts from soldiers and merchants, painting a picture of a people both barbaric and noble in Roman eyes. The Germanic tribes were not a unified nation. They were a collection of peoples: the Cherusci, Chatti, Marcomanni, Suebi, Saxons, Angles, Goths, Vandals, and dozens more. Each tribe had its own territory, customs, and chieftains. Leadership was not always hereditary. Kings and chiefs were chosen for their prowess in battle and wisdom in council. Assemblies of free men made important decisions, clashing their weapons against shields to show approval. Family was everything. Society was organized into clans, and blood feuds could span generations. A man's honor was his most precious possession, worth more than gold. Warriors formed bonds of loyalty with their chiefs, swearing oaths to fight beside them until death. The common people lived in scattered farmsteads and small villages. Their homes were longhouses made of timber and thatch, with a central hearth where families gathered. They wore simple woolen tunics and cloaks, fastened with bronze or iron brooches. Women managed the household, ground grain, baked bread, brewed beer, and wove cloth. Men tended livestock, hunted in the forests, and trained for war. Agriculture was basic, but sustaining. They grew barley, oats, rye, and some wheat. Root vegetables, beans, and peas supplemented the diet. Meat came from domesticated animals and from hunting boar, deer, and aurochs in the great forests. Beer was the common drink, made from fermented barley. The Romans noted that Germans seemed to drink excessively, though this may have been exaggeration. There was little formal education. Knowledge passed orally from generation to generation. Bards and singers preserved tribal histories and legends in verse. The Germans had no writing system of their own until they adapted Roman letters and, later, developed runic alphabets. Religion was animistic and polytheistic. They worshipped gods of war, thunder, fertility, and the sun, making sacrifices in sacred groves. Odin, Thor, and Freya would later become famous in Norse mythology, but similar deities were revered by the southern Germanic tribes. The most significant event of this era occurred in 9 CE, in the Teutoburg forest. A Germanic chieftain named Arminius, who had served in the Roman army and held Roman citizenship, turned against Rome. He united several tribes and ambushed 3 Roman legions under the command of Publius Quinctilius Varus. Over 3 days of brutal fighting in the forest, nearly 20,000 Roman soldiers were slaughtered. Varus fell on his sword, and his head was sent to Rome. The defeat shocked the Roman world. Emperor Augustus reportedly cried out, "Quinctili Var, legions red! Give me back my legions, Varus!" Rome abandoned its plans to conquer Germania beyond the Rhine. The river became a frontier, a border between civilization and barbarity in Roman minds. Arminius became a hero to his people, though he was eventually murdered by his own kinsmen who feared his growing power. For the next several centuries, the Germanic tribes raided across the Rhine and Danube, sometimes serving as mercenaries in Roman armies, sometimes as enemies. They learned Roman military tactics, adopted some Roman technologies, and traded amber, furs, and slaves for Roman wine, jewelry, and weapons. But the Roman Empire was changing, weakening from within, and the Germanic peoples were growing restless, pushed from the east by the Huns and drawn to the wealth of Rome.
Chapter 3: The Great Migrations, the Fall of Rome, year 400 to 500. The 5th century brought chaos to Europe. The Huns, led by Attila, swept westward from the steppes, displacing entire peoples. The Gothic tribes fled before them, and the Roman Empire, now divided into eastern and western halves, could not hold back the flood. Germanic tribes poured across the frontiers. The Visigoths sacked Rome itself in the year 410, an event that sent shockwaves through the civilized world. The Vandals crossed through Spain and into North Africa, establishing a kingdom that would last a century. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes invaded Britain after the Roman legions withdrew. The Franks settled in Gaul. The Ostrogoths took Italy. The Burgundians carved out territories in what is now eastern France and Switzerland. In the chaos, the Western Roman Empire collapsed. In 476 CE, the last Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus, was deposed by a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer. The date is often marked as the end of ancient history and the beginning of the Middle Ages. But what of the lands that would become Germany? Much of this region remained outside direct Roman control even at Rome's height. The tribes here, the Alemanni, the Bavarians, the Thuringians, and especially the Saxons, continued their traditional ways. They were pagans while much of Europe converted to Christianity. They were warriors and farmers, living in a world of myth and legend, Life remained much as it had been. Villages grew slowly. Chieftains became petty kings, ruling over territories that might encompass just a few dozen square miles. Warfare was constant but small-scale, raids and feuds rather than great campaigns. The spoils of war, cattle, slaves, and treasure determined a man's standing. Food was coarse but adequate. Bread, porridge, beer, cheese, and preserved meats filled the belly. Honey was the only sweetener. Vegetables came from kitchen gardens. In lean years, famine stalked the land, and the weak died. Education remained oral. Druids and wise women held knowledge of herbs, healing, and the calendar. Stories of heroes and gods were recited around fires. Young boys learned the skills of war, hunting, and metalwork. Girls learned the skills of the household and healing. The achievement of this age was survival. In the collapse of Roman order, these peoples maintained their identity, their languages, their customs. They were not civilized by Roman standards, but they endured. Please like and subscribe to our channel. It will greatly motivate us to keep making these documentaries.
Chapter 4. The Rise of the Franks, Clovis and the Merovingians, 481 to 751 CE. From the chaos of the migration period, one Germanic people rose to dominance: the Franks. Their story is central to understanding medieval Germany, for their kingdom would eventually encompass much of Western Europe. The Franks had settled in what is now Belgium and northern France. They were initially federates of Rome, guarding the frontier in exchange for land and payment. When Rome fell, they remained, and under a dynasty called the Merovingians, they expanded aggressively. In 481 CE, a 15-year-old named Clovis became king of one Frankish tribe. He was ambitious, cunning, and ruthless. Over the next 30 years, he would unite the Frankish tribes, defeat rival Germanic kingdoms, and convert to Catholic Christianity, a decision of profound importance. Clovis was born around 466 CE, the son of Childeric I and grandson of Merovech, the legendary founder of the dynasty. He ruled until his death in 511 CE. His conversion to Christianity around 496 CE was politically shrewd. Most Germanic peoples who had converted were Arians, followers of a Christian sect considered heretical by Rome. By embracing Catholic Christianity, Clovis gained the support of the Roman bishops and the remnants of Roman civilization. The baptism of Clovis was a turning point. It allied the Frankish kingdom with the Church, and that alliance would shape European history for 1,000 years. Bishops became advisors to kings. Monasteries became centers of learning and agriculture. Christianity began to spread among the pagan Germanic tribes, though often by force. For the common people, life changed slowly. Most were now peasants bound to the land, working fields owned by warrior aristocrats. The Roman villa system had collapsed, replaced by smaller, more primitive estates. Villages consisted of wooden buildings clustered around a lord's hall, and increasingly a church. Agriculture remained the foundation of life. Peasants grew rye, barley, oats, and wheat. They kept pigs in the forests, chickens in the yard, and oxen for plowing. They owed labor services to their lords, working the lord's fields during planting and harvest. Taxes were paid in kind, in grain, livestock, or handicrafts. Education was almost non-existent for common folk. Literacy was the preserve of the clergy. Monasteries preserved ancient texts, copying manuscripts by hand in scriptoria. The great classical learning of Rome was fading, replaced by a narrow focus on theology and scripture. Yet these monasteries kept the flame of learning alive through the darkest centuries. The Merovingian kings after Clovis were often weak and decadent. Real power shifted to palace officials called mayors of the palace. The kingdom was divided and reunited several times as sons inherited and fought over their father's lands. Warfare was endemic. Frankish warriors wore chainmail and conical helmets, fought with spears, swords, and throwing axes called franciscas. Battles were brutal, hand-to-hand affairs. Sieges were rare. Most warfare consisted of raids to capture livestock and slaves. One event stands out: the Battle of Tours in 732 CE. An Islamic army from Spain raided deep into Francia. Charles Martel, the mayor of the palace, gathered the Frankish warriors and met the invaders near Tours. The Franks fought on foot, forming a solid shield wall. After days of skirmishing, the Muslim commander was killed and the army withdrew. Christian Europe celebrated the victory as divine deliverance. Charles Martel became known as the Hammer. His son, Pepin the Short, would take the final step. In 751 CE, with the blessing of the Pope, Pepin deposed the last Merovingian king and founded a new dynasty, the Carolingians. The stage was set for the greatest of medieval rulers.
Chapter 5: Charlemagne, the father of Europe, 768 to 814 CE. If one man defines medieval Germany and Europe, it is Charles the Great, Charlemagne. Born around 742 CE, he became king of the Franks in 768 CE, ruling jointly with his brother Carloman until Carloman's death in 771 CE left Charlemagne sole ruler. He would reign for 46 years, transforming Europe. Charlemagne was a warrior king in the Germanic tradition. He stood well over 6 feet tall, an imposing figure with a thick neck, prominent belly, and piercing eyes. He was constantly on campaign, leading his armies nearly every year of his reign. He expanded the Frankish kingdom until it stretched from the Atlantic to the Danube, from the North Sea to central Italy. His most bitter war was against the Saxons, a pagan Germanic people who occupied what is now northwestern Germany. For 33 years, from 772 to 804 CE, Charlemagne waged a brutal campaign of conquest and forced conversion. The Saxons resisted fiercely, led by a chieftain named Witikind. Villages were burned, hostages executed, and entire populations deported. At Verdun in 782 CE, Charlemagne ordered the beheading of 4,500 Saxon prisoners who refused baptism, an atrocity that shocked even his contemporaries. But Charlemagne was not merely a conqueror. He was also a reformer and patron of learning. Recognizing the decay of education and literacy, he initiated what historians call the Carolingian Renaissance. He gathered scholars from across Europe to his court at Aachen, Alcuin of York, Paul the Deacon, Theodulf of Orleans. He established schools and monasteries and cathedrals, standardized Latin script into a clear, readable form still called Carolingian minuscule, and collected ancient manuscripts. For the common people, Charlemagne's reign brought both opportunity and oppression. His conquests meant military service, a burden that fell on free farmers. Those who could not afford the required arms and armor fell into dependence on wealthier lords who could protect them. This was the beginning of feudalism, a system where land and loyalty were exchanged for military service and protection. Agriculture benefited from a period of relative stability. The three-field system began to replace older two-field methods, increasing yields. Peasants planted one field with winter wheat or rye, one with spring oats or barley, and left one fallow. Iron plows drawn by oxen turned heavier soils. Water mills ground grain more efficiently than hand querns. Diet remained simple: bread, porridge, vegetables, occasional meat. The wealthy ate better, of course, with roasted meats, game, imported spices, and wine from their own vineyards. Hunting was a privilege of the aristocracy. Poaching was punished harshly, sometimes with death. On Christmas Day, 800 CE, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans. Whether this was a surprise, as some sources claim, or carefully planned, the act proclaimed a revival of the Western Roman Empire. Charlemagne now stood as the protector of Christendom, the secular arm of the Church. He established a capital at Aachen, rebuilt a magnificent palace and chapel modeled on Byzantine architecture. He issued laws called capitularies, covering everything from church reform to weights and measures. He appointed officials called missi dominici, envoys of the Lord, to travel the empire ensuring his laws were obeyed. Relations with other powers were complex. He exchanged embassies with the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid in Baghdad, receiving gifts including an elephant named Abolabas. He fought the Avars in the east, destroying their power and seizing their legendary treasure. He established buffer zones called marches along frontiers, governed by military commanders called margraves. When Charlemagne died in 814 CE, he was buried in the chapel at Aachen, seated on a throne, crowned and holding a scepter, a book open on his lap. He left behind an empire larger than any in Western Europe since Rome, but he also left a problem: his sons.
Chapter 6. The Division, the Treaty of Verdun, 814 to 843 CE. Charlemagne was succeeded by his only surviving son, Louis the Pious, born in 778 CE, ruled from 814 to 840 CE. Louis was a deeply religious man, more comfortable in a monastery than on a battlefield. He alienated his nobles with constant ecclesiastical reforms and struggled to control his own sons. Louis had 3 sons by his first wife and a fourth, Charles the Bald, by his second wife Judith. Frankish tradition demanded the kingdom be divided among all sons, but Louis attempted to keep the empire intact for his eldest, Lothair. This led to civil war. His sons rebelled repeatedly. In 833 CE, Louis was briefly deposed and forced to do public penance, humiliated by his own children. When Louis died in 840 CE, his sons went to war. Lothair, the eldest, claimed the imperial title and demanded supremacy. But his brothers, Louis the German and Charles the Bald, allied against him. In 842 CE, they swore the Strasbourg Oaths, recorded in both Old French and Old High German, among the earliest texts in these languages. In 843 CE, exhausted by war, the brothers agreed to the Treaty of Verdun. The empire was divided into 3 kingdoms. Lothair kept the imperial title and a long, narrow strip running from the North Sea through Burgundy to Italy. Charles the Bald received West Francia, roughly modern France. Louis the German received East Francia, the German-speaking lands east of the Rhine. This division would have profound consequences. East Francia, the kingdom of Louis the German, is the direct ancestor of Germany. For the first time, there was a distinct German kingdom, separate from France. Louis the German, born around 806 CE, ruled East Francia from 843 to 876 CE. His kingdom encompassed Bavaria, Swabia, Saxony, Thuringia, and Franconia. He spent much of his reign fighting to expand eastward against the Slavs and defending against Viking raids from the north. The common people saw little change. Wars of kings and emperors meant devastation, certainly, but the rhythm of agricultural life continued. Serfs plowed and planted, harvested and threshed. They paid their dues to local lords, attended church on Sundays, and hoped for good weather and peace. The church grew ever more powerful. Monasteries were centers of learning, agriculture, and political influence. Monks cleared forests, drained swamps, and established model farms. They brewed beer, made cheese, copied manuscripts, and cared for the sick. The rule of Saint Benedict, emphasizing prayer, work, and obedience, spread throughout Germany. Education remained limited. Only clergy and a few nobles could read. Learning was in Latin, and the curriculum was based on the 7 liberal arts: grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. This education was designed to serve the church, not to question or innovate. Architecture began to advance. Charlemagne's chapel at Aachen inspired others. Monasteries built in stone, with rounded arches and thick walls in the Romanesque style. These were fortresses as much as places of worship, able to withstand siege. The descendants of Louis the German continued to rule East Francia, but the Carolingian dynasty was weakening. Viking raids intensified. Magyar horsemen from the east raided deep into Germany. Local lords built castles and took matters into their own hands. Central authority was crumbling.
Chapter 7. The Saxon Dynasty Otto the Great, 919 to 1024 CE. In 911 CE, the last Carolingian king of East Francia died without an heir. The German dukes, powerful regional rulers, elected one of their own as king. In 919 CE, they chose Henry the Fowler, Duke of Saxony, so named because he was supposedly hunting with a falcon when news of his election arrived. Henry I, born around 876 CE, ruled from 919 to 936 CE. He was a warrior king who defended Germany against Magyar invasions and expanded eastward against the Slavs. He established fortified towns called burgs to protect against raids and began to build a stronger, more centralized monarchy. His son Otto I, born in 912 CE, would become the greatest German ruler since Charlemagne. He ruled from 936 to 973 CE and earned the title Otto the Great. In 936 CE, he was crowned at Aachen, deliberately invoking Charlemagne's legacy. He wore Frankish regalia and received oaths of loyalty from all the major dukes. But almost immediately, Otto faced rebellions. His own brother and several dukes conspired against him. Otto crushed these revolts with ruthless efficiency, deposing dukes and appointing loyal followers. He understood that the church could be a pillar of royal power, so he appointed bishops and abbots, granting them lands and authority. These prince-bishops became vassals of the king, owing him military service and counsel. In 955 CE, Otto won his greatest victory. A massive Magyar army invaded Germany, ravaging Bavaria. Otto gathered the forces of all Germany and met the Magyars near Augsburg at the Battle of Lechfeld. The Germans formed disciplined infantry and heavy cavalry. After fierce fighting, they routed the Magyars. Prisoners were hanged. The Magyar threat ended, and they settled in Hungary, eventually converting to Christianity. Otto's victory made him the undisputed master of Germany and the savior of Christendom. In 962 CE, he marched to Rome and was crowned emperor by Pope John XII, reviving Charlemagne's imperial title. The Holy Roman Empire was born, a political entity that would last, in various forms, until 1806. Life for the common people improved somewhat under Otto. Reduced raiding meant more stable agriculture. Population began to grow slowly. New lands were cleared for farming. German settlers moved eastward into Slavic territories, a process called the Aussiedlung, or Eastern Settlement, that would continue for centuries. The manor system became entrenched. Peasants lived in villages on a lord estate. They farmed strips in large, open fields, using a 3-field rotation. They owed labor services, typically 3 days a week on the lord's domain, and paid rent in kind. They could not leave the manor without permission. In exchange, the lord provided justice and protection. Diet was monotonous. Bread made from rye or barley was the staple, accounting for perhaps 70% of calories. Porridge, beans, cabbage, turnips, onions, and leeks supplemented the diet. Meat was rare for peasants, perhaps a bit of pork or chicken on feast days. Milk, cheese, and eggs provided protein. Beer was safer than water and drunk by everyone, including children, though it was weaker than modern beer. Education remained the province of the church. Cathedral and monastic schools taught reading, writing, Latin, theology, and chant. A handful of exceptionally talented students might study the liberal arts in depth, but opportunities were limited. The vast majority remained illiterate, their knowledge passed down orally. Architecture entered a new phase. The Etonian style featured basilica churches with tall towers, rounded arches, and rich decorations. Metalworkers created magnificent liturgical objects, golden altar frontals, jeweled reliquaries, and bronze doors with scenes from the Bible cast in relief. Otto's successors, Otto II and Otto III, continued his policies. Otto III, born in 980 CE, was particularly ambitious, dreaming of a universal Christian empire ruled from Rome. But he died young in 1002 CE, and with his death, the grand vision faded. The Saxon dynasty ended in 1024 CE with the death of Henry II, who left no sons. Once again, the German princes elected a new king, choosing Conrad II of the Salian dynasty. The pattern of German history was set: an elective monarchy, constant tension between king and princes, and the pursuit of the imperial crown in Italy.
Chapter 8. The Salian Dynasty, the Investiture Controversy, 1024 to 1125 CE. The Salian dynasty began with Conrad II, born around 990 CE, who ruled from 1024 to 1039 CE. He was crowned emperor in 1027 CE and worked to strengthen royal authority. He added the kingdom of Burgundy to the empire and promoted lesser nobles called ministerials, who were technically unfree but served as administrators and warriors to counterbalance the great dukes. His son, Henry III, born in 1017 CE, ruled from 1039 to 1056 CE. He was deeply pious and worked closely with reforming elements in the church who sought to end simony, the buying and selling of church offices and clerical marriage. He deposed 3 rival popes and appointed his own candidates, demonstrating the emperor's power over the church. But reform had unintended consequences. As the church purified itself, it also asserted its independence. Monks and reformers argued that spiritual authority came from God alone, and that secular rulers had no right to appoint bishops or abbots. The conflict came to a head under Henry IV, born in 1050 CE, who became king as a child in 1056 CE and ruled until 1106 CE. In 1075 CE, Pope Gregory VII issued a decree forbidding lay investiture, the practice of kings appointing bishops and abbots. Henry IV refused to obey. He appointed his own candidates and declared the Pope deposed. Gregory responded by excommunicating Henry and releasing all his subjects from their oaths of loyalty. The German princes, always eager to weaken the king, turned against Henry. To save his throne, Henry made a dramatic journey over the Alps in winter, standing barefoot in the snow outside the castle of Canossa in January 1077 CE for 3 days until the Pope relented and lifted the excommunication. But the humiliation did not end the conflict. War raged between emperor and pope for decades. Henry IV was eventually deposed by his own son, Henry V. The investiture controversy was finally resolved by the Concordat of Worms in 1122 CE, a compromise where the emperor retained some influence over bishop appointments but acknowledged the pope's spiritual authority. For Germany, the controversy was disastrous. The monarchy was weakened and the princes gained power. Local lords built castles, raised armies, and acted as independent rulers. The dream of a strong, centralized German kingdom receded. The common people suffered during these wars. Armies lived off the land, seizing food, livestock, and valuables. Villages were burned, fields trampled. Famines and epidemics followed in the wake of war. Yet this was also a period of economic growth. Population was increasing. New technologies spread. Heavy plows, horseshoes, and the horse collar, which allowed horses to pull more efficiently. Water mills and later windmills multiplied. Agricultural productivity rose, supporting a larger population. Towns began to grow. Markets attracted merchants and craftsmen. Walls were built for protection. Town charters granted by kings or bishops gave residents freedoms unavailable to rural serfs. Burghers, as town dwellers were called, formed guilds to regulate trades and protect their interests. The German urban network was taking shape. Trade expanded. German merchants joined the Hanseatic League, a powerful trading alliance that would dominate Baltic and North Sea commerce for centuries. They traded timber, furs, amber, and grain for cloth, wine, spices, and luxury goods from the south. Education evolved. Cathedral schools became more sophisticated, eventually developing into universities. The first German university wouldn't be founded until the 14th century, but scholars traveled to Bologna, Paris, and Oxford, bringing back new knowledge. Romanesque architecture reached its height. Magnificent cathedrals rose in cities like Speyer, Mainz, and Worms, with massive stone vaults, imposing towers, and rich sculptural decoration. These were statements of power and piety, visible for miles, dominating the landscape. Literature flourished in this period. Heroic epics like the Nibelungenlied, based on ancient Germanic legends, were composed. Courtly romances, influenced by French models, celebrated chivalry and noble love. Poets called minzingers composed lyric poetry, singing of love and longing. The Salian dynasty ended with Henry V's death in 1125 CE without a direct heir. Once again, the princes elected a new king, choosing Lothair of Supplinburg. But real power was shifting to two great families, the Welfs and the Hohenstaufens. Their rivalry would define the next century.
Chapter 9, the Hohenstaufen Dynasty, Frederick Barbarossa, 1138 to 1254 CE. In 1138 CE, The German princes elected Conrad III, the first of the Hohenstaufen dynasty. But the greatest Hohenstaufen was his nephew, Frederick I, known as Barbarossa Redbeard, born around 1122 CE, who ruled from 1152 to 1190 CE. Frederick Barbarossa was the very image of a medieval king, tall, strong, with a red gold beard and a commanding presence. He sought to restore the glory of the empire, invoking the legacy of Charlemagne and the Roman Caesars. He styled himself as the defender of Christendom and the bringer of peace and justice. But Frederick's ambitions led him into endless conflicts. He made 6 expeditions to Italy, attempting to assert imperial authority over wealthy Italian cities and the papacy. The cities, organized into the Lombard League, resisted fiercely. At the Battle of Legnano in 1176 CE, the Italian militias defeated the imperial army. Frederick was forced to negotiate, granting the cities autonomy in exchange for nominal recognition of his authority. In Germany, Frederick worked to strengthen the monarchy, though he never achieved real centralization. He granted privileges to the princes, confirming their power in exchange for support. He cultivated an image of majesty through elaborate ceremonies and propaganda. His court became a center of culture, attracting poets and scholars. Life for the common people was changing. Germany's population was booming, perhaps doubling between 1000 and 1300 CE. Forests were cleared, swamps drained, and new villages founded. The expansion eastward accelerated. German settlers, often invited by Slavic rulers seeking to develop their lands, established towns and farms in Poland, Bohemia, and the Baltic regions. Agriculture became more sophisticated. Farmers experimented with crop rotations and animal husbandry. The manor system remained dominant, but some serfs were able to buy their freedom or move to towns, where they could earn a living as craftsmen or laborers. A German saying emerged: "Stadtluft macht free," city air makes you free. A serf who lived in a town for a year and a day without being reclaimed by his lord became a free man. Diet improved slightly for some. Wheat bread became more common among the better off, though rye remained a staple for most. Salted and smoked meats preserved for winter. Fish, required on fast days, were available from rivers and fish ponds. Beer, in the wine-growing regions, wine were drunk daily. Education expanded with the growth of towns. Cathedral schools trained clergy, but town schools also appeared, teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and Latin to the sons of merchants and craftsmen. Universities were founded in the 14th century, but German scholars traveled to Paris, Bologna, and Oxford to study law, medicine, theology, and philosophy. The Gothic style of architecture began to appear. Pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and flying buttresses allowed for taller, lighter buildings with large windows filled with stained glass. Cologne Cathedral, begun in 1248 CE, would become one of the greatest Gothic structures in Europe, though it wouldn't be completed until the 19th century. In 1189 CE, Frederick Barbarossa joined the Third Crusade, leading a massive German army to the Holy Land. But in 1190 CE, while crossing a river in Anatolia, he drowned. His death was a blow to German prestige. Legend says he did not truly die, but sleeps in a cave in the Kyffhauser Mountain, waiting to return when Germany needs him most. His son, Henry VI, born in 1165 CE, ruled from 1190 to 1197 CE. Through marriage, he acquired the Kingdom of Sicily, creating an empire that surrounded the Papal States. But he died young, leaving a child as heir. Germany descended into civil war between the Welfs and Hohenstaufens. Out of the chaos emerged Frederick II, born in 1194 CE, Henry VI's son, who would become the most remarkable and controversial emperor of the Middle Ages. Raised in Sicily, he was more Italian than German, speaking multiple languages, fascinated by science, philosophy, and exotic animals. He kept a menagerie, including elephants and a giraffe. He wrote a treatise on falconry that remains a masterpiece of ornithology. Frederick II ruled from 1220 to 1250 CE. He spent little time in Germany, focusing on Italy and his beloved Sicily. He granted enormous powers to the German princes in exchange for their support, issuing decrees that made them virtually independent rulers. This was a turning point. Germany would remain fragmented for centuries. Pope Gregory IX called Frederick the Antichrist. They excommunicated each other repeatedly. Frederick led a crusade while excommunicated, negotiating with the Sultan of Egypt and crowning himself King of Jerusalem. His court in Sicily was a center of learning, where Christian, Muslim, and Jewish scholars worked together, translating ancient Greek and Arabic texts into Latin. Frederick II died in 1250 CE. His son Conrad IV ruled briefly, dying in 1254 CE. The Hohenstaufen dynasty ended, and Germany entered a period called the Great Interregnum, a time of chaos when multiple candidates claimed the throne and none could establish authority. The empire that Charlemagne built, that Otto revived, seemed on the verge of dissolution. In the second part of the video, we will start with the Great Interregnum of 1254 and the Golden Bull and cover till the rise of Nazism. We will greatly appreciate your like and subscribe. Thank you.